Wednesday show. Wednesday show. Wednesday show. I don't know if you can hear me or if you're even there. I don't know. I am talking like a vampire. Yet here we are, my dear. How's everybody doing? Hopefully everyone's doing well out there. It is another lovely Wednesday here in Orlando, Florida. And we're going to be going through and talking about Disney with you guys. We have a poll right now going on in the chat room down here or over here, depending on what kind of device you're watching from. But we have a poll going on what the topic should be for tonight, and we're letting you guys be the ones who actually go through and choose it. Hey, I have a friend named Doc who's a big fan. Can you say hi to Doc? Hey, Doc. Howdy, theme park adventure. Yeah, so you guys are going to be choosing the topic while we go through here. We're going to be doing our intro in just a few minutes. But is everyone doing well out there? Hopefully everyone's doing well. Today I continued my tour of Dinosaur. So if you guys have not heard, when they announced Dinosaur's closing, which was about a little over a month ago, about 6 weeks ago, one of my followers on Instagram asked me how many times I was going to write it from then until it closed, and I said I'm going to write it 100 times. So I've been going over Dinosaur a lot. Today I went on 5 more times, bringing me up to a total of 39 times in the last about 45 days. Let's see, what day of the week was it? It was a Tuesday that they announced it. I want to say it was the 2nd, but we're going to figure it out right now. Yeah, September 2nd. So let's do... How many days has it been since September 2nd? It's been 43 days, so I'm 4 days shy of averaging one a day, which is kind of sad. But at the same time, I'm loving it. 8 more days until race day. I am very excited. Hey, Frank fam, how are you doing today? Yeah, so let's get this party started. We're going to start at what number is this? 843rd. You guys can see it on your side. I cannot see it on my side. There's a few things I do not like about this compared to the other one, but let me see what it is. 843rd. All right, let's start the 843rd episode of the Wednesday show in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 843rd episode of the Wednesday show. Today is October 15th, 2025, and I'm your host, as always, Brent Dodge. Hello. Today we're going to be going through and going with the topic that you guys are choosing right now in the chat room. The 3 options are either Dinosaur, an episode of Ask the Expert, where you ask me about anything and everything Disney, or a game of Connect the Dots. So you guys have until we finish this entire intro to get your votes in. So if you want one, make sure you vote for it right now. But of course, before we get to any of that, let's talk about our news for the week. First off, thank you everyone out there who's been joining us for our Saturday in the Park. If you didn't already know, every single Saturday we do a live broadcast from someplace found throughout the Walt Disney World Resort. You never know where we're going to be coming to you from, but I promise you we will always be coming to you live from Disney. So make sure you join us every single Saturday at 1 o'clock Eastern Time for all of the live Disney fun. And also, if you know some people who want to subscribe to this channel, send them over. Let's check out our starting numbers for this week. We are currently 1,956 subscribers. If we get a game of Connect the Dots or Ask the Expert tonight, and we get into more subscribers as the evening goes on, that means we will go into extra innings for those games. So send a friend or 2 or 44 away. Because that's how far we are from 9,000 subscribers, which is absolutely crazy. Also, we did talk about Dinosaur earlier, about how I was going through and I've been writing Dinosaur over and over and over again. In case you didn't know, we do have a book out there called A Closer Look at the Animal Kingdom's Dinoland USA. It is 160 pages of non-stop fun facts about Disney. Or the at Dinoland USA. I cannot talk right now. So send a friend or two too to go purchase that book. You can go get it on my Etsy shop, or you can get a digital copy over on your Kindle right now. And as always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our Patreon pals. If you're one of our Patreon pals out there in the chat room right now, give us an oh yeah. Also, speaking of oh yeah, because YouTube keeps on sending me these notifications all the time now. Like literally every single day I'm getting these notifications from YouTube, and they're like, don't forget to mention to people that you've got a member. Is it a membership program? I always forget. I don't know. Someone joined my membership the other day for Club Oh Yeah, that's what I call it. Here on YouTube, it's like $3 a month or something. I have a few bonus videos out there, but not a ton. But it told me to mention it to people, so I'm mentioning it to you right now because it has been literally every single day. YouTube's like, don't forget to tell people about your membership program. I'm like, okay, YouTube, calm down. I'm going to be broke no matter what. So, anyways, let's get to it. We're going to end our poll right there. It looks like our winner is going to be a game of Connect the Dots. 42% of you guys voted for Connect the Dots, 29% voted for Dinosaur, and another 29% voted for the Ask the Expert. So let's get to it. We're going to play a game of Connect the Dots. Now, in case you've never joined us here before for a game of Connect the Dots, let me explain to you how Connect the Dots works. And if you're one of those people who's played before, you can start playing right now by throwing some stuff into the chat room to make things easier for me after we go through and finish up our description here. So we always talk about how things can be connected from one thing in Disney to another thing in Disney, and you can, put it all together. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to be playing this game of Connect the Dots where you guys are going to be throwing random things about Disney into the comments. For instance, right now, Christine has already started us off with Dinosaur. And with that, someone else is going to be throwing a different topic in there. For instance, Theme Park Adventure just threw down Disney Rabbits. I have to go through and I have to connect Dinosaur to Disney Rabbits. And from Disney Rabbits, then I have to go to whatever the next one is, which is Frank Pham just said Tigger. And then from Tigger, we have to go to whatever the next one is after that. Sometimes it is a very quick, easy, breezy, beautiful color girl way to get to it. And there's other times where it takes us a while to get from one item to the next item. The only rule is if you put something, so for instance, Frank Pham just put down Tigger, that means Frank Pham cannot put down the next thing. They have to wait for someone else to put something into the comments before they can put another one down, because we're not just going to have it so one person is going through and deciding the entire factor of the night. So if you have back-to-back ones on there, we're just going to completely ignore whatever the second one you have in there is and go to whatever the next person's thing is. So start throwing down as many things into the comments as possible, and we will go through and connect the dots. Like I said, if we get more subscribers as the evening goes on, we will go into longer innings for Connect the Dots. But right now we have roughly about 50 minutes to go through and connect the dots. And let's once again, before we go, take a look at what our starting number is here, because I feel like tonight is the night for us to hit 8,960. I have a feeling. I have a stronger feeling. No, I don't. I have a stronger feeling that we're going to hit 9,000, but I do not have that strong feeling. But we're getting closer to 9,000. We are 44 people away, people. Also, go through and and before we get started, so red flag over. I see the ocean. Are you referring to the Disney movie, the Disney nature film, The Ocean? Just before I get there, I can start thinking about it. Just answer it in the comments. And let's get this party started. Ladies and gentlemen, let's play a little game called Connect the Dots. Dinosaur. Dinosaur is a classic attraction that is found over in Dinoland, USA, and has been around in Dinoland, USA for quite some time. Actually, if you go all the way back to 1998, it was kind of around, but at the same time, it did have a different name, which was known as Countdown to Extinction. Now, in Countdown to Extinction / Dinosaur, Dinosaur and Countdown to Extinction have it so we go into a wonderful machine called the Time Rover, a miraculous machine that literally transports you to the age of the dinosaurs. How? That's proprietary. Now, with the Time Rover, we are able to travel back in time. There is roughly about 16 different Time Rover vehicles that are actually found on the attraction. However, one of them, this one, number 7, is going to be the only one that was actually found over at the Indiana Jones attraction in Disneyland. So what happens was they're going through and they were building the dinosaur attraction here, and they're using the same track, same ride vehicles, but they needed to have a ride vehicle that was already working, and they transported one from Disneyland over to Walt Disney World and have it so that was the first one to ever go on the track, and they repurposed it and named it number 7. So if you ever go on number 7, that's why. But anyways, let's talk a little bit about Indiana Jones Adventure. Do 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 do. It's just gonna be me singing the Indiana Jones song for the next half hour. No, so, the Indiana Jones Adventure found over in Disneyland is a true staple of a classic attraction. Opened up back in the 1990s, and back then, this was before California Adventure existed, right across the street from Disneyland. So back then, when they were going through and creating the brand new Indiana Jones attraction, what they did instead was they actually had it so it was taking the place of the parking lot. I know, pay Paradise and put up a parking lot, but this is going to be the opposite. Get rid of a parking lot and put up Paradise. So what they decided to do is they decided to completely get rid of a parking lot, one section of the parking lot, and have it so that's where the building for the Indiana Jones attraction would be on the other side of the railroad tracks. The parking lot that they got rid of was the ER parking lot. And in fact, if you're actually in the queue line for Indiana Jones and you got the projection scene with Sala, and he's like, "Hello there, my friends. This is what they have. You're going to use a magical thing that we now have, which is called a seatbelt." And they go through and they're talking about how you have to, put your seatbelt on. If you look in the back side of the room next to the projector, you can actually find the old parking lot sign for Eeyore, the Eeyore parking lot. Now, Eeyore, of course, was originally found in the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Deep in the 100-acre woods where Christopher Robin played. I just realized that I was trying to connect to a completely different thing, so we now have to figure out a different way to go about doing this. So in the 100-acre woods, I was going for Tigger, and I completely just realized that. Anyways, sidetrack. Okay, so in the Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, we had several different characters that can be found in the original stories. These characters include Tigger, Piglet, Owl, and of course Rabbit, who is one of the Disney rabbits. What? So there's several different Disney rabbits that we have throughout the history of the Disney universe. Now, if you actually go through all the way back to even the 1920s, we had one of the original rabbits was, of course, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, not the Unlucky Rabbit like my coworker Christian, who I used to work with over at Yak and Yeti. He was always like, "Oh, there's this character named Oswald the Unlucky Rabbit." And I was like, "He is a lucky rabbit. He is not unlucky." And he's like, "Nope, I'm pretty sure you're wrong." And unfortunately, you are wrong, Christian. But Christian was a really nice guy, and I didn't want to judge him too much, but I did judge him a lot because of that. Anyways, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit was going to be our original Disney character way back in 1923. I mean, obviously, we had like the Alice comedies before that, and Felix the Cat, but he was the main staple of an attraction or of a television show. And eventually, we found out that he would go away and be replaced by the one and only Mickey Mouse. And I know what you're thinking, but what on earth happened to Oswald the Lucky Rabbit? How on earth did we get him back? Well, it all goes back to Monday Night Football. Al Michaels, one of the hosts of the football series, was actually traded with NBC to go to NBC, so then NBC would eventually give us Oswald the Lucky Rabbit back. It was this crazy trade that has only happened once in history, where a real live human person was traded for a cartoon character. Let's talk a little bit about football. Now, if you go over to the central area of All-Star Sports, you can find several different sports there, obviously, with football being the central one. On the one side of the football section, we have it so there is a helmet that is maroon, and then on the other side, we have one that is orange. This is actually supposed to represent the two main colleges in Florida, which would be the University of Florida and the Florida State University and the University of Florida, right? Yes. In addition to those football schools, you can find several different colleges all around on the banners, including people like the Wisconsin Badgers, who are my team. They're not doing very well right now, but still, you got to support them. Stay true to your school, people. That is a famous song that was actually done by the Beach Boys. Let's talk a little about the Beach Boys. So the Beach Boys would eventually have it so in the history of their amazing career, they had things like Surfing USA, which we all love. They had things like Kokomo. Actually, let's talk about Kokomo, because if you go through and listen to the song Kokomo, Bermuda, Jamaica. I'm on Pretty Mama. That song was originally done for the film Cocktail, starring Tom Cruise. And I know what you're thinking. Why on earth are you talking about Cocktail? Because that's not a Disney film. Haha. Actually, it is. So Disney back in the 1980s had it so there was a completely different film thing that they had, and that was called Touchstone Pictures. You probably heard of Touchstone Pictures before because there's multiple films out there that had the Touchstone labels or film label before it. Now, Cocktail was one of those things, and they had it so they hired the Beach Boys to sing the main song, which was Bermuda, Jamaica, come on, pretty. And the actual film location for that music video was at the Polynesian Resort with the Grand Floridian, which was going to open up later on that year, behind them. When they went through and they actually filmed that video, they had it so the Beach Boys would be the first people ever to go and stay at the Grand Floridian. Now, why am I talking about Grand Floridian? Let me explain to you why I'm talking about Grand Floridian. Grand Floridian would open up back in 1988, and of course, it was more of a nicer hotel experience than all the other hotels that Disney had released up until that point. It's not my favorite, but that's besides the point. Inside of the resort, we can find several different hidden nods to different Disney characters. We've got things like Peter Pan. We've got things like Mary Poppins. We've got things like Peter Pan again. We got Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Daisy, and Goofy there. And of course, we also have the Beauty and the Beast characters from the Beauty and the Beast scenes. Something just fell outside. I don't know what it was. But anyways, inside the restaurant or inside the hotel, if you go through, there are several different nods to different characters from English literature, which is kind of a weird thing because the entire thing is actually based off of a hotel that is found over in California. But why are those things connected? I don't know. But we do have a lot of different English characters that can be found in this resort. And actually, speaking of different English characters, going back to Winnie the Pooh, we have several different characters that can be found over in the England Pavilion over at Epcot. And inside of Christopher Robin's room, you can find one of the actual typewriters that A.A. Milne, the author of Winnie the Pooh, would actually type his stories on. So inside of this room, you can find where he dreamt up the characters of Winnie the Pooh. You can find Piglet, and of course, we can find Tigger too. Now, speaking of Tigger too, Tigger originally was not in the first Winnie the Pooh stories. However, he did come in at a later point. And to pay tribute to this, when Disney went through and created 3 different individual Winnie the Pooh cartoons, they had it so Tigger would not appear until the second one. And that's why he shows up in the second Winnie the Pooh cartoon. Now, all 3 of those films would eventually become a package film known as The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which would be released back in 1977. Now, there were several different animators that would work on The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, but one of them would be Bernie Matheson. Now, Bernie Matheson eventually, years later, would work on Winnie the Pooh, which came out in 2011, and Winnie the Pooh was not The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, but it was the sequel to Winnie the Pooh. Now, Bernie Matheson, of course, now has it so he has his own room inside of Walt Disney Animation that is named after him, but he's not the only person who has the different things that are named after him. In fact, if you go to the actual building itself, it is known as the Roy E. Disney Animation Studio. Now, Roy E. Disney, of course, being Walt Disney's grandson, or no, I'm sorry, nephew, not grandson. Roy O. Disney, his brother, it was his son. Now, there are 4 different Roy Disneys in the lineage, but we're not going to get into all of that right now. Instead, let's focus a little bit more on Roy Disney and animation, because Roy Disney did start working in the company way back in the 1960s, and he would eventually go through with his father and have it so he would start to play different instrumental parts of the company. This wasn't the only father-son duo that was going around in the company at this time. He was actually also working closely with a man whose name was Don. Now, Don had it so his father would also be working at the company with Walt Disney way back in the day. Don's last name, Iwerks. Don's father, Ub Iwerks, the original animator for Mickey Mouse. Now, Ub Iwerks, I was actually going to go a different route. Just a little fun fact here. Ub Iwerks and we share a birthday. It's like when people ask, oh, do you have a celebrity that has the same birthday as you? I always just say, Ub Iwerks. By the way, we had a lot of people who just joined us. For those people who just joined us, we are playing a game called Connect the Dots, where we are connecting different dots from things that you are throwing into the chat room and going through and having everything else. Welcome to everyone who's joining us. Mark Way Up. Mark Way Up. I do appreciate you, by the way. Earlier we were talking about the what's it called? The spot or not the group Club. Oh yeah, I can't even remember. It says like join the thing down here someplace. I don't know, but Mark's our newest one. So hello, Mark. Nice to meet you. Okay, so Iwerks would work on several different Disney projects throughout all of his lifetime. At one point, him and Walt Disney did get into a fight. He left the Disney studio for quite a few years, and then eventually he would come back and start working at the company again with his son Don. Now, the two of them would work on several different projects together. Included in some of these projects are things like Circle Vision. If you've ever gone over to Epcot and you've gone over to China or Canada and you've gone into the Circle Vision thing, Reflections of China, or over at Canada Far and Wide, which is not as good as the old one with Martin Short, but that's completely besides the point. Those are Circle Vision products, and Iwerks, along with his son Don, would actually go through and film those things together. In fact, if you actually go through the history of how they created them, you could learn a little bit more from the Imagineering story. Now, the Imagineering story, of course, was the series that came out in 2019 when Disney Plus first made its debut. Now, the Disney Plus series, the Imagineering story, was actually done by Leslie Iwerks, which is Don's daughter slash Ub's granddaughter. So we have all this different family lineage going here, but that's completely besides the point because we're not going to sit around and focus on this. We're going to focus on other things. Now, we have to get from Iwerks to the ocean, and we're going to do it in a very, very unique way. Because now that we were talking about family lineage and the Imagineering story, let's talk a little bit about how Disneyland came to be. Now, when Disneyland was going through and being created, they wanted to have it so there's going to be central ideas found throughout the entire journey that can be found inside of the Disney parks. Now, we obviously had Main Street USA would be paying tribute to Walt Disney's hometown of Marceline, Missouri. Tomorrowland would be focusing on the future, futuristic ideas, spaceships, spacemen, space. And then Fantasyland would focus on these stories that Walt Disney already told that we all knew and loved. Stories like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We had Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And then we would have Frontierland, focusing on the craze that was going through America at the time, which was all about the Wild West and the frontier and characters like Davy Crockett or Zorro and these amazing, amazing, amazing historical figures. And then we also had one last thing. The one last land was going to be called True Life Adventureland. Now it's, of course, known as Adventureland, but originally it was going to be called True Life Adventureland. And True Life Adventureland was going to be paying tribute to a series of documentaries that the Disney company had started filming back in the 1940s that took real life footage of different animals and put it to a storyline. Now, Disney back in the 1940s, when all the stuff was going wrong with the world, World War II, and all of his animators were gone, he started to have to figure out new ways to get revenue coming to the studio. And yeah, they started to dabble in things like live action films with things like Treasure Planet coming out, or not Treasure Planet, Treasure Island. Treasure Planet would come out much later. But they would have things like Treasure Island. But in addition to that, he decided to start going through and doing documentaries. Now, when he started to go through and start doing these documentaries, he came up with the central idea of the True Life Adventures. Now, these True Life Adventures consisted of him sending these different documentaries, people going out into the wilderness and filming things like penguins or lions or bears. Oh my. And while they're going through and filming these different things, then they would come back and the animators and the different story artists that were found inside the studio would put that footage to a storyline that they could go through and tell, and then they could have it so they could go through and actually explain exactly what's going on in the wilderness. And Walt Disney won, I think it was 7 different Academy Awards. Don't quote me on that number. I could be wrong on that number. Usually I say don't quote me on that, and I do know for a fact it's the number. But this time around, do not quote me. It might not be 7. It might be 11. But don't quote me on either, because they could both be wrong. Anyways, in the True Life Adventure series, they would go through and they would win so many different Academy Awards. And they started off with a lot of big hits, and then slowly things started to fade away, and they started to focus on things like Disneyland. And when they started to focus on things like Disneyland, they stopped focusing too much time on the true life adventures. And when that happened, they just kind of faded away. Now, when these different things started to fade away, they eventually would, back in 2005, 6, somewhere around there, don't 8, 2008, I think it was 2008, back in like 2000, the 2000s, we'll just say, back in the early 2000s, eventually Disney said, you know what we should do is we should bring back the True Life Adventure series. But instead of having it so it's called the True Life Adventure series, why don't we just switch up the name a little bit, switch up the branding, and call it Disney Nature? And their first ever Disney Nature film was going to be called Earth, and the second one was going to be called Oceans. And that is going to bring us to our next thing here. Where is our next one at? I see where our next one is. So going from Oceans to Chef Mickey's. So one time Mickey was in the ocean. No, so Oceans would go on to be nominated for some Academy Awards for cinematography, along with multiple of the Disney Nature films. Actually, if you ever want to go through and try to figure out a little bit more about Disney Nature, I think one of the best places to go is Rafiki's Planet Watch over at Disney's Animal Kingdom. If you ever go out there, especially around Earth Day, which is going to be April 22nd, of every single year. I was going to say 1998, but that's just when Disney's Animal Kingdom opened up. If you go over there every single Earth Day, they usually have it so they have the newest Disney Nature film being kind of advertised everywhere. On the train right over, you'll see the billboards for it. When you get over to the actual station, you'll find several different posters. Even to this day, you'll go over there and find several different posters for different Disney Nature films. And those are all the most recent Disney Nature films that have come out within the last 5 years. So go check that out sometime in the near future. But you know what? We're at Rafiki's Planet Watch. Let's stay at Rafiki's Planet Watch. Now, over at Rafiki's Planet Watch, we do have a lot of different fun details, like Joanna. That's the, if you go to the one wall, there's like a picture of a cast member who's a cartoon character. Her name's Joanna. Just random knowledge we're going to throw out there at you too. But in addition to that, we do have it so we have one of my favorite experiences inside of Disney's Animal Kingdom, and that is going to be the animation class. Now, the animation class would be something that started off at Disney's Hollywood Studios or Disney MGM Studios way back in 1989, where they allowed guests to come out and actually learn how to draw specific Disney characters by an actual Disney animator. And when they would go through, they would teach them how to create a specific character. And now they are focusing more on the animal characters because it's at Disney's Animal Kingdom. So it just makes sense for us to focus more on the animal characters. But when you're also in this area, if you take a look all around at the walls around you, you can find several different animators along with several different characters painted on the walls. Some of my favorites are characters like Bernard and Bianca from The Rescuers. Who knew? Let me look all up here. It's just all Rescuers. But we also have characters like Joanna from Rescuers Down Under. Who knew? In addition to those characters, we do have several other characters like I keep on thinking of Rescuers characters now. We've got Louis the Alligator from Princess the Frog and a lot of other lovable characters as well. Now, the characters that can be found on the wall, of course, were inspired by the different animated characters that are found in different Disney films. This is not going to be the only time anywhere on property currently that you can find those characters that are inspired by animation that allow guests to learn how to draw them. You can also find, on occasion, it's not an everyday thing, but over at Art of Animation Resort, I was going to say something completely different, but at Disney's Art of Animation Resort, in the lobby, you can sometimes, not always, but you can sometimes learn how to draw different Disney characters from a animator as well. So let's focus a little bit on this area because this area I think is pretty incredible. Now, if you go through the resort, of course, there are 4 different themed areas, each one of them around 2 Pixar films and 2 around Disney animated films. The 2 animated films or Disney animated films are going to be The Lion King and The Little Mermaid, and the other 2 are going to be Finding Nemo and Cars. Now, if you go through these areas, 3 of them do have pools. One of them does not, which is kind of a shame because in the film, The Lion King, we do see Simba jump into the pool or the water, and he does not have the opportunity to do that at his own resort, which is just a shame, but that's completely besides the point. Now, when the resort opened up, They had it so one of the coolest things that they added into the pool was the fact that you can put your head underwater, and in while your head was underwater, you could actually be able to hear different characters talking to one another. Complete side note: I was the first guest ever to put their head underwater. I, those doors opened up on that opening day, which was May 30th, nope, 31st, May 31st, 2011, and it's 12, 2012. And as soon as those gates opened up, I went straight there. I stuck my head underwater before anyone else could. And then I also went down 2 slides before anyone else did too. So if you ever stick your head underwater, just remember where the lineage started. Way back in the day. So anyways, let's talk a little bit about Disney pools. Now, Disney pools have gone through so many different changes throughout the years to the point that now we have it so you can hear different characters while you're underwater. But there's also different pools around the resorts that also have different tributes to old things as well. For instance, if you go over to Fort Wilderness, you can actually find the giant water tower barrel. Kind of weird looking, but it's Disney history. So if you've ever gone to River Country up until it closed in 2001, that was actually the barrel that was found in River Country, and they just transported a little bit down property to put it there. In addition to that, if you go over to Contemporary Resort, we do have it so there's that water slide that's going down there. That was going to be one of the first water slides that they ever put in Disney property. The first one was going to be Polynesian. The second one they would add to the pool later on at Contemporary. Now, after you go down that water slide, of course, you can go up the steps and then go up some more steps and then go up some more steps and go to the back of the resort, because in the back of the resort, you can go to Chef Mickey's. Inside of Chef Mickey's, we've got it so you can meet several different Disney characters. We got Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, Pluto, and sometimes Daisy, but not always guaranteed, kids. So don't be disappointed if you don't see her. Now, Chef Mickey's has been a staple of the resort, not since opening day. However, they always have had a restaurant at that location since opening day. But as time has gone on, it eventually switched over to Chef Mickey's when more and more character meals were starting to get more and more popular. Now, this was not going to be the first location that there was a character meal at. In fact, the first place they ever had a character meal at was at the Lily Bell. Now, the Lily Bell is going to be the restaurant that used to be found over at Disney Springs, where Paddlefish now sits. Now we just have scuba divers stealing the money over there. But before that was Fulton's, and before that we had the Emperor's Lily, not the Lily Bell, the Emperor's Lily. And inside the Emperor's Lily was the first place that they ever had character meals. And at those character meals, they had it so Santa Claus would come to town every single year and start doing meet and greets with people and walk around to their tables while they're eating to ask little boys and girls what they wanted for Christmas, and never, unfortunately, asked me. And I was very disappointed. Shame on you, Santa Claus. But speaking of Santa Claus, let's get to 1990. So back in the 1990s, Tim Allen did star as the Santa Claus, or Santa Claus with the Santa Claus with an E at the end, because that's important, because a clause is a completely different thing than a clause. If you don't know what the difference between a clause and a clause is, the one is a human being, the other one is like a rule. So clause and clause are two completely different things, but at the same time, the film was called The Santa Claus, and even though it was called The Santa Claus, it was referring to the clause, but it was not referring to the clause, if that makes sense at all. Now, in the Santa Claus, again, the film, not the clause or the clause, just the actual Santa Claus, the film, in the Santa Claus, Tim Allen accidentally kills Santa Claus, puts on a suit, and takes over the role of Santa Claus. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why on earth did this man kill a man and then just decide to put on his clothes? Makes no sense to me either. But hey, that's just how movies roll sometimes. In reality, if you ever killed a person, put on their clothes, most likely, kids, you're going to be going to jail. Not in this film. Instead, you get a really nice job, and eventually you get a really nice wife, and you get some new kids, and life is grand. But not in this movie. This movie is teaching you terrible, terrible life lessons. So let's get away from it for just a little bit, but we have to have a connection from the Santa Claus to our next thing. So let's talk a little bit about the Backlot Tour. Now, back in the Backlot Tour, we actually had it so there were several different nods to the Santa Claus. Again, the film, not the Claus with the Claus, but this Claus. So in the Santa Claus 3, that's the third movie, the one with starring Martin Short too, where he's like, cool down. That was all they showed in the trailers. And I said, freeze. Anyways. In the Santa Claus 3, we have it so there's a few different props from that film that can be found in the studio backlot tour, which of course is no longer there. In addition to those backlot things, we could also find several different nods to old Disney attractions / old Disney movies. Some of my favorite Disney attractions that you could find there were things like the World of Motion items. So if you took a look at the back wall, I don't know why, but I always like point over here because in my head I can see it perfectly. And then I realize every single time that you guys don't. And actually, what's really ironic, and I didn't even put this together until right now, is this time I looked over here and the thing that we are trying to get to is the poster that I have right there, which is the Phantom Manor. And we're going to get there to the Phantom Manor. We just need to take a few extra steps to get there. So the backlot tour had it so there's several different references to different Disney films. If you ever did the backlot tour over in Disneyland Paris, that's right, there was a backlot tour over in Disneyland Paris. Let's talk a little bit about that actually, because when they were going through and trying to figure out what the second park was going to be in Paris, the different people in Imagineering said, you know what? That Studios Park over in Hollywood, or not Hollywood, but Disney MGM Studios. Disney MGM Studios is doing really well, so let's build another studio park. And in fact, it got to the point where Michael Eisner wanted to have it so there was going to be a studio park in Walt Disney World, one in Paris, and also one in Tokyo. This was the original idea, people. Eventually, the people in Tokyo said absolutely not, but the people with Paris were actually Disney Imagineers, and they said, okay, if that's what you want. So they built a smaller park with a studio backlot tour. Now, I did go on the studio backlot tour when I went over there, and it was kind of cool, but at the same time, it was not the coolest attraction I've ever been on. However, there were a lot of other really cool experiences found over in Disneyland Paris while we were out there. Now, this is going to be at the second park. The first park, of course, was not completely, but most of it was designed by Imagineer Tony Baxter. Now, I know what you're thinking, Tony Baxter, I know that name. Yeah, you should know that name. Now, Tony Baxter was the head Imagineer for things like Splash Mountain, Big Thunder Mountain, One Little Spark of Inspiration, that's right, the Journey into Imagination with Figment, and so many other classic attractions. However, he was put in charge of Disneyland Paris. But with Disneyland Paris, they came up with a few different ideas that were going to be different than what they had over here in Walt Disney World, or what they have in California in Disneyland, or what they had over in Tokyo Disneyland. They wanted to switch things up just a little bit. Now, one of the first things that they wanted to switch up is they didn't want to have it so there was an entire land dedicated to the future of Tomorrowland, but because Jules Verne was such an iconic character in French culture, they wanted to have it so it was Discoveryland. Now, in Discoveryland, they would have it so everything was going to be focused around the works of Jules Verne. Up in Fantasyland, again, we would still have that idea of focusing around the idea of Fantasyland and the different Disney characters and the different Disney films that we have all come to know and love. Adventureland out there is really, really cool, but the big thing that they wanted to work on was Frontierland. Because Frontierland is this idea of focusing on a brand new frontier, and originally they said, maybe we won't do Frontierland, and the French people said, you have to do Frontierland because it is the most American thing that we can think of, and we want that in our park. And Disney said, okay, we'll do that. And not only will we do it, we'll actually make it so our Frontierland is the biggest Frontierland that we've ever done. So if you ever go out to Disneyland Paris, you can go to Frontierland, and while you're there, you can see a massive Big Thunder Mountain Railroad that's on the island where Tom Sawyer Island should be. They just never got Tom Sawyer Island out there. And around it is the rivers of America. And off in the distance is something a little bit more mysterious. And I know you're thinking, Haunted Mansion. Kind of, but not really. This is going to be like the Haunted Mansion's cousin, which is really cool and really weird, but absolutely lovable. And of course, I'm talking about the Phantom Manor. Now, the Phantom Manor also focuses on a lot of the different things that we know and love with the Haunted Mansion, but this time around, it focuses on a phantom in a manor. It also has it so it brings a very unique thing that had never happened up until this point in Disney parks. Because up until this point, if you had something like Snow White Scary Adventures would be in Fantasyland in Disneyland. And then when Magic Kingdom opened up, they had it so that was in Fantasyland. And then when they opened up Disneyland Paris, it was in Fantasyland. However, they wanted to have it so the Phantom Manor was going to be based around the Haunted Mansion, but at the same time, it was not going to be the exact same thing. So, over in Disneyland, we have the Haunted Mansion found in New Orleans Square. The second park that opened up was Magic Kingdom, where it was in Liberty Square. Then over in Tokyo, they said, hey, you know what? We're going to put it in Fantasyland. And so eventually, when they said we're going to have a Haunted Mansion style attraction at this brand new Disneyland Paris park, or at Euro Disney at that point, we're going to have it so it is in. And they said, well, listen, we could have it in Fantasyland because it actually works in Tokyo, or we could put it in like Adventureland, or we could put it in Frontierland and have it so it connects with everything else. So when you're going through the graveyard of all the other ones, this one you're going through like an old mining town, which I just absolutely love. I loved the Phantom Manor so much, and I wish I could go through and ride it again. I don't even know what our next one is. I've been rambling on and on and on. Okay, so we go from that. Where's our next one? Phantom Manor. Kermit's our next one, it looks like. Can't imagine what would happen if someone gave him a cup of coffee. I could not drink coffee. I have had a cup of coffee once in my life, and it was, I do not drink coffee at all. Okay, we're going from the Phantom Manor to Kermit the Frog. Okay, so can we do this? Well, of course we can do it. We just have to figure out how we're going to do it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about Phantom Manor. Now, one of my favorite little details inside the Phantom Manor is while you're exiting the Phantom Manor on the right-hand side, if you look up at the window, again, I'm looking off to the right-hand side as if you guys can see it, but when you're walking on the Phantom Manor, the window's on the right-hand side, and that's just what I'm seeing. Up in the window, you can actually see the Phantom, and the windows are opening and closing, and it's the coolest thing. Oh my gosh, I need to get back to Disneyland Paris sometime soon because I really do miss it. It's been like almost 10 years since I was there, my first and only time. Okay. Let's continue. Okay, so Phantom Manor. Now, Phantom Manor also has it so in addition to being created by Tony Bennett, no, we're not going to go down that road. I don't like that road. We're going to go, I like sticking around with Phantom Manor for a bit. I just want to talk about Phantom Manor now. So in Phantom Manor, we have it so there is a stretching room, and while you're going through the stretching room, they have it so they are telling a different story. If you are ever over there, a lot of the times, two of the times, we went on Phantom Manor like 3 or 4 times. 2 of the times we were in there, the cast member said, would anyone like me to translate this into English? And we're like, yes. And then they sat there behind us and kind of explained the storyline of what was going on. It was pretty cool. In fact, actually, let's talk a little bit about that. That's actually a really interesting thing that we should talk about because I've had a few different friends who have not gone to different Disney parks around the world, and we've talked about this quite a bit, and they are kind of blown away by how the different Disney parks around the world work because they said, oh, is it not all in Japanese or it's not all in English? So in Paris, what would happen is they would go through and they would have it so the attraction would be partially in French and partially in English. So, for instance, the best example I can give to this for people who have never been out to Disneyland Paris or to Tokyo, I've never been to Tokyo, or any of the other Asia parks, which I've never been to as well. If you've ever gone on Remy's Ratatouille Adventure over at Epcot, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure is an exact duplicate of what the Ratatouille Adventure attraction is found over in Paris, to the point where every single thing, including the dialogue, is the exact same attraction as what we have here at Epcot compared to what was out in Paris. So how they keep on going back and forth between English and Spanish, or not Spanish, French, exact same way that they have it at the actual attraction. Let's talk a little bit about Epcot because I think we're over here. We might as well. Now, Epcot has gone through quite a few different experiences throughout the entire year, or not the entire year, its entire lifetime. Some of them being, of course, the French Pavilion. Now, the French Pavilion is the first of the World Showcase countries that has had its own expansion. We, of course, have added 2 different World Showcase pavilions to the park since it opened up back in 1982, those 2 being Norway and Morocco. In fact, actually, if you go through and watch Norway and Morocco during the nighttime shows, like, for instance, right now it's Luminous, before that was Harmonious, before that it was Epcot Forever, before that it was Illuminations, before that it was Illuminations Forever, before that it was Illuminations, before that it was Illuminations 1994, before that was Illuminations 1993. I think you were seeing where I'm going with this. Anyways, Illuminations and all the other different things. When they added Morocco back in 1984, Morocco said, hey, we can't have any of these lights on our temple that the one building represents. So because of that, we ask that you do not do it. And they said, that's completely fine. So when Norway would open up a few years later in 1988, they said, hey, you know what? they're kind of on opposite sides of the lagoon, so it would just make sense for us not to add the lights to Norway as well. So that way we still have that symmetry across the ocean on what's being lit up and what's not being lit up. Now, when you go through and talk about the different things being lit up inside of Epcot, one of the biggest ones, of course, happened for the first time ever on September 30th, 2021, and that would be Spaceship Earth. In honor of the 50th anniversary of Walt Disney World, they decided to put on the Beacons of Magic, the magical lighting that is done on Spaceship Earth. I know some people are like, well, I kind of miss the old lighting. Well, if you go over towards Spaceship Earth when the fireworks are not going on, or when the fireworks are going on, I mean, they do have the old lights lighting up thing, because the little lights that are found for Beacons of Magic are not part of that show until the very finale. So you can still see them. You just don't see them for as long throughout the day. But that's besides the point. Now, Beacons of Magic does have it so it goes through the same show throughout the entire year, but they also start to spread different shows into the Beacons of Magic show as the year goes on. So the Beacons of Magic show is like a 5-minute show, and it happens every 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the time of year. So for instance, it is now getting darker earlier in the day. Boo. And because of that, the show will take place every 15 minutes to spread it out. When it has it so that it becomes dark later in the day, yay, like during summertime, then we have it so it's every 10 minutes because it's not as dark as long. So during these shows, they usually have it so there is some sort of nod to a different Disney film, like Be Our Guest, put our service to the test. That's going to be during Food and Wine Festival. And then, of course, things like, I don't know, maybe during Festival of the Arts, they played the Rainbow Connection starring the one, the only Kermit the Frog. That's right, we got to him. Yay! Now, Kermit the Frog, along with Miss Piggy and a lot of other Muppets, do play the version that can be found here at the Beacons of Magic inside of Epcot. Hands down, one of the most emotional things that I've ever experienced inside of a Disney park. There's a lot of different emotional things that I've experienced inside of a Disney park. However, one of the things that I have to see every January/February when the Festival of the Arts is going on is making sure that I do, for fact, catch that show every single time, because it just, hearing the Rainbow Connection is just a beautiful song, but hearing inside of Epcot just makes it that much more amazing. I'm trying to figure out where our next connection is here. Let's see here. Rafiki looks like. Oh wait, let's see here. Rafiki. We're on Kermit. So someday we'll find it. The Rainbow Connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All okay. So, anyways, over at some of the other places that you can hear the Rainbow Connection is there's different spots where they kind of pipe it in the music at Hollywood Studios from time to time at the entrance of the park. They also used to have it so you could hear it while you were in the restrooms. Fun fact. Over at the Muppets Courtyard. So let's talk a little bit about the Muppets Courtyard. Now, at the Muppets Courtyard, we of course had it so everything was Muppet themed. It closed down earlier this year, and I'm still not over it. I was looking earlier today, and I did go on Muppet Vision 3D 27 times this year before it closed up, and I still do not think that was enough. However, when you're going through Muppet, I don't know why I put that in there, but hey, we're just putting it in there. While you're going through Muppet Vision 3D, of course, we had it so there was amazing heckling by Statler and Waldorf. We had the Swedish Chef there. We had Bean Bunny. We had the Orchestra of Penguins. And of course, we had all of our amazing characters up on screen as well. Overall, it was a perfect show, in my opinion. I absolutely loved Muppet Vision 3D from start to finish. But it wasn't just about the show. It was also about the pre-show. And not even just the pre-show, but also the queue line. So there was actually an extended queue that most people never went to. If you go back and watch some of my videos, I did have some videos of it earlier this year where I was able to go through the queue before it closed up and get full videos of all the things. But in that extended queue, they did have it so there were several different posters for different films that were now starring different Disney characters. So some of these characters were like Dive Hard instead of Die Hard. It had Professor Bunsen Honeydew and his assistant Beaker diving into the water. They had Star Chores, which was a play on Star Wars, and it had Kermit and Miss Piggy on there. We had several different ones that were kind of scattered around. This is not the only time that Disney's ever done like little spoofs on different films. In fact, we've actually had several different spoofs kind of scattered around the parks throughout the years. Over in Tomorrowland, even you can still find things like the thing for Leonard Bernstein, which is a play on Leonard Bernstein, who was a musician. There's a poster for him still to this day over in Tomorrowland. If you go to Mickey's PhilharMagic, we got several different posters there for things like Wheezy Sings the Blues, or no, I'm sorry, not Wheezy Sings the Blues. The Genie Sings the Blues. Wheezy on his final squeak. We have the three Caballeros doing their mariachi band. The three little pigs who blew the house down, and so many other different things there. In fact, let's talk a little bit about some of these posters inside the line. Let's focus on and let's not focus on that. Let's focus a little bit on Mickey's PhilharMagic. I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to get to the next character, and I think I just landed on where to go. Now, Mickey's PhilharMagic has a lot of different history behind it. In fact, if you follow me over on Instagram and you follow my Instagram stories on a regular basis, then you know that I often go through and have it so we have several different things like ask me anything type of things. We also have it so we have different trivia from time to time. We did trivia yesterday actually all about Mickey's PhilharMagic. That's why it's kind of fresh in my mind. Inside of this attraction, we have it so there's different 7 different films, or was it 8 films? 7 different films that are being paid tribute to. We have in the order of the appearance. We have it so it is Beauty and the Beast, followed by Fantasia, followed by Little Mermaid, The Lion King, Coco, Peter Pan, and then Aladdin. Now, when you go through and watch these films, you may just be thinking, oh, it's a nice little show. But at the same time, we know that there's a little bit more to it than what Disney always has us know. So if you go through the entire area of this attraction, there are several different nods to the former attractions that were found here. Now, first off, we had it so there was a little show called Mickey Mouse Review. Inside of Mickey Mouse Review, we had characters like the three Caballeros. And guess what they sing? Mariachi. Hence the poster that is found in the lobby. We also had it so there's characters like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, aka Mickey Mouse with his sorcerer's hat on. He was the star of the entire thing, and that's why he's there as well. We also had things like Peter Pan and Tinkerbell. Haha, guess what? They're there as well. But I know what you're thinking. Yeah, but not all those things, all those movies that are found inside of Mickey's PhilharMagic were around when the attraction first opened up. And you are completely correct, because Mickey's PhilharMagic came years after the Mickey Mouse Review. Now, Mickey Mouse Review also had a little segment that would feature the three little pigs, which is why they're out there. But then you have things like the Lion King. That was not in Mickey's Mickey Mouse Review because that did not exist yet. But Mickey Mouse Review was replaced by, that's right, Working for Peanuts. Yes, it was a Magic Journeys and Working for Peanuts, 2 3D shows. But those were replaced by the Lion King. So there was a Lion King show over here before we got the Festival of the Lion King. This one was called The Legend of the Lion King. And in it, we had all of our favorite characters as giant puppets like Simba, Zazu, Pumbaa, Timon, and even Rafiki was there. And that's how we get to Rafiki, people. Now, from Rafiki, Jolly Frank family is from. Are we talking about the goat from Hunchback of Notre Dame? Jolly. Okay, we're gonna get to Jolly. That might be the end. We might go from Jolly to. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking Jolly from Hunchback of Notre Dame. Okay, so going from where were we at? We were over at Mickey's PhilharMagic, but we talked about Rafiki. So Rafiki, of course, obviously Rafiki also is one of 2 characters, actually 3 characters, one of 3 characters that have ever had their own land inside of a Walt Disney World park. The other 2, of course, are Mickey and Minnie. Mickey had Mickey's Toontown Fair. We also had Camp Mini Mickey as a nod to Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse over at Disney's Animal Kingdom. And in addition to those 2, we also had Rafiki's Planet Watch, which we've already gone on and talked about for quite some time earlier tonight. So we're going to take a step away from that. No, we're not. We're going to lean right in. Because while we were over here at Rafiki's Planet Watch, we already talked about the Animation Academy. We already talked about Joanna. We already talked about quite a few things like You've got the Wildlife Express over to the area. But in addition to all these different things, we also have one amazing thing that most people just walk on by, but I personally absolutely love, and that is going to be the petting area. Now, inside this petting zoo, we've got several different characters that you can meet. In fact, if you ever have ran one of the Walt Disney World marathons, like I've constantly run like a ridiculous person. When you get to the Animal Kingdom section in the backstage, they actually have it so these goats come out and you can go through and pet them. And while you go through and pet them, you can see that there are several different things that are written on their backs, but not on their actual backs. It's like little things that they actually put on their backs that say like, go get them. Because the goats like to cheer us on. They're the goats of cheering. Anyways, there have been several different goats that have been found throughout the history of Disney films, but one of them, of course, is from 1996, Hunchback of Notre Dame, which is Jolly, Esmeralda's goat friend that we all know and love. And let's take her back to, where did we start this at? We're going to take Jolly and we're gonna go back to Dinosaur. Okay, so Jolly originally made her debut in the Hunchback of Notre Dame. That's not the only character that is an animal inside that film. In fact, the other main character that is an animal in this film, actually not even a main character, it's probably just like a little side character. However, it is one of my favorite little details that is found inside of the film, and that is the fact that Phoebus's horse is named Achilles, and the only reason they named him Achilles was because when he was trying to get him to follow, he says, "Achilles, heel," as a nod to Achilles' heel. Now, this is not going to be the only time that we hear the phrase Achilles' heel inside of a Disney film. In fact, the very next year, in 1997, we had a little film called Who Put the Glad in Gladiator? Hercules. Of course, Hercules would come out in 1997, and in it, Phil's previous person that he trained was Achilles, and he would say that, how's the heel of his? Now, Hercules was a classic attraction right from the start. Film right from the start. I personally absolutely love Hercules. Now, Hercules has made several different appearances in the parks in one way or another. For instance, at one point we did have a Hercules parade found over at Disney MGM Studios. That would actually be replaced by a Mulan parade, which was actually replaced by the Disney Stars and Motor Cars Parade. Now, the Disney Stars and Motor Cars Parade had it so there was all these different cars that looked like old-timey cars, but they were actually themed around Disney characters. So, for instance, we had one that looked like the genie, and in the back of the genie, we had it so Aladdin and Jasmine were back there waving away. In addition to that, we had one that looked like Muppet Vision 3D, and we had a massive Kermit the Frog. Like, go find the picture. It's kind of funny, kind of scary, too. Massive Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy in the back, waving away. Sometimes Bean Bunny was there, giant Bean Bunny, not just a small little Bean Bunny. But we had several different characters that could be found in this parade. This would eventually be replaced by Block Party. Yeah. Now, Block Party Bash is one of those attractions, or one of those parades that I truly love, near and dear to my heart. If you've ever looked anywhere around my condo, I guarantee you can find one or two, or I think last count was like 2,000 Block Party Bash balls. I would go over there and collect them because I wanted to make a ball pit out of them. And guess what? I made a ball pit out of them. We also always have a Block Party Bash ball right here as well, just in case you ever wondered what that yellow thing is off camera. That's a Block Party Bash ball. But we're not here to talk about Block Party Bash. We're here to talk about a few other things instead. So when Block Party Bash was around, it was focused completely on the different Pixar films. Now, Pixar, up until that point, was a powerhouse in the world of computer animation. We had characters like Buzz Lightyear and Woody from Toy Story. We had characters like Flick the Bug from A Bug's Life. We had characters like Buzz and Woody from Toy Story 2. We had Mike and Sully from Monsters, Inc. We had Mr. Incredible, Mrs. Incredible, Jack, and so many other characters, of course, from The Incredibles, and all these different things. Now, around the time that Block Party Bash came out, we had it so, yes, we had so many different Pixar films that focused around computer animation, but at that point, we only had a few different computer animation films that were done by Disney. If you go through way back to the 1980s, you can find a few different references to computer animation in the films. In fact, if you go back and watch like The Great Mouse Detective, we had it so there was this amazing clock tower scene where we had the different cogs of the clock going. That was all computer animation. Then if you go just a few years later into 1994, we had like the wildebeest scene in The Lion King. That's all computer animation. And then eventually in 1995, they worked with Pixar and created Toy Story, and then they also worked with Pixar and funded A Bug's Life. And in 1999, they funded Toy Story 2. And around all this different time, Disney said, these guys are doing great. We should start doing our own animation films too that are made with computers. And they decided to start their own computer animation too, with the first fully one being Dinosaur. Now, Dinosaur came out in 2000, and because of the success of Dinosaur, well, not really success, but to help everything tied together, they decided to rename the attraction that opened up in Disney's Animal Kingdom in 1998 that was known as Countdown to Extinction, found in Dinoland, USA, to Dinosaur to help tie in with the movie. And that, my friends, is how we connect the dots. Whew. Okay, I'm going to get a water. So, did we all learn a thing or two tonight, hopefully? That was did we go up in subscribers? That's the other question. Did we go up in subscribers? We started at 895 and we are at 8956. Boo, we didn't go up any subscribers. Okay. But we are going to be wrapping up this video right here. Thank you everyone out there for joining us. As always, tonight's episode is sponsored by our wonderful Patreon pals. If you're one of our Patreon pals out in the chat room, give us an oh yeah, or if you're part of Club Oh Yeah, give us an oh yeah as well. Thank you everyone out there for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, remember that anything can happen if you let it. Until next time, have a great week, everybody. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Goodbye now. Are they gone? Are they gone? Good, my cheeks are just killing me. I just can't stand this kind of pressure. Jiminy